Hello, everybody. We are on chapter 31 today of Proverbs. It is the last chapter of the book. Proverbs is usually used as a one chapter per day book. People try to go through it. So chapter 31 is probably one of the least read chapters. At least it is for me, because this is how I used to read Proverbs, one chapter per day. And so it's an interesting chapter, and it's not as talked about as much. And as we get into it, you might see why. It's actually not written by Solomon. It's not his words. It is the words of King Lemuel. And it's not really even his words. It is the words of his mother. So she is giving him advice, and he is writing down that advice that she gave him. And we are again reading from the Message Bible. The words of King Lemuel, the strong advice his mother gave him. O son of mine, what can you be thinking of? Child whom I bore, the son I dedicated to God. Don't dissipate your virility on fortune-hunting women, promiscuous women who shipwreck leaders. Leaders can't afford to make fools of themselves, gulping wine and swilling beer. Lest hungover, they don't know right from wrong. And the people who depend on them are hurt. Use wine and beer only as sedatives to kill the pain and dull the ache of the terminally ill, for whom life is a living death. Speak up for the people who have no voice, for the rights of the down and outers. Speak out for justice. Stand up for the poor and destitute. A good woman is hard to find and worth far more than diamonds. Her husband trusts her without reserve, and never has reason to regret it. Never spiteful, she treats him generously all her life long. She shops around for the best yards and cottons, and enjoys knitting and sewing. She's like a trading ship that sails to faraway places and brings back exotic surprises. She's up before dawn preparing breakfast and for her family and organizing her day. She looks over a field and buys it. Then, with money she's put aside, plants a garden. First thing in the morning, she dresses for work, rolls up her sleeves, eager to get started. She senses the worth of her work, is in no hurry to call it quits for the day. She's skilled in the crafts of home and hearth, diligent in homemaking. She's quick to assist anyone in need, reaches out to help the poor. She doesn't worry about her family when it snows. Their winter clothes are all mended and ready to wear. She makes her own clothing and dresses in colorful linens and silks. Her husband is greatly respected when he deliberates with the city fathers. She designs gowns and sells them, brings the sweaters she knits to the dress shops. Her clothes are well made and elegant, and she always faces tomorrow with a smile. When she speaks, she has something worthwhile to say, and she always says it kindly. She keeps an eye on everyone in her household and keeps them all busy and productive. Her children respect and bless her. Her husband joins in with words of praise. Many women have done wonderful things, but you've outclassed them all. Charm can mislead and beauty soon fades. The woman to be admired and praised is the woman who lives in the fear of God. Give her everything she deserves. Festoon her life with praises. And that is the end. I know I do a man's voice really, really well. I can get that really deep. So, if you have ever been somebody who is around I'm going to say radical feminist or a third wave feminist, there were probably a few things in there that sort of triggered your brain, like raised red flags. And I want to talk about those today. So I grew up, I went to school in the really early 2000s, went to university. And so I have been surrounded during my young life with this growing movement of third wave feminism. And so even as I read this, I was kind of like, oh, geez, and my old sort of thought patterns were popping up. So I know exactly how many women would react to this, because it's exactly how I would have reacted to it. That's too much pressure. Oh, the perfect women, Christianity trying to make us something that we're not. Why should we have to be this perfect mold of a woman who makes her own clothes and does all this stuff? And I find that now really awful and a terrifying place to be as a woman. So I want to go through it a little bit. There is no doubt that there is pressure on women and always has been. And there's always been pressure on men. So let's put men aside, though. I'm going to talk to women as I am a woman. But don't take anything that I say as a claim that men have it easier, or that men don't suffer, or that men sit on their high horse all day. You could take it in many different ways, but we're going to talk about women. And so this mother is raising a king, right? So she is raising King Lemuel, and I couldn't find where he was king of. I don't know if he was Jewish. In fact, one of the commentaries said that they weren't even sure that they were talking about the Christian God when she said, "Oh, child, the son I dedicated to God," although it is capitalized. So I don't know what the consensus is on that. But she's raising a king. She's raising a man to be the leader of her people. And so she cares not only for her son, but she also cares for her people. So this is a really strong woman. So she's giving him advice on how to act himself, that he's a leader, and so there are stricter rules for him. He doesn't get to just go out drinking and womanizing, basically. He has more on his shoulder. He has more responsibility. He is going to be king, and so there's more expected of him, both in behavior and thought and attitudes, and there is an expectation of the kind of woman that he is going to choose to be his queen. Because a lot of people like to think that women had absolutely no authority up until the 1960s, and that's just not true. A lot of queens had a lot of power, usually the most coveted spot in the court would be the king's ear, right? So whoever the king trusted and listened to, and a lot of times that was the queen. A lot of times it wasn't, but a lot of times it was. So it's not a general thing. It really depended on the woman and what her relationship was with the king and all that. So clearly this woman, this mother, is beloved by her son, and she is giving him advice that he is heeding, and he finds it so good that he wants to share it with others, right? And so she's trying to get him to understand that it's better to find a good woman rather than a beautiful woman. And not to say that a woman can't be both, right? And a woman that he can trust and never regret trusting. So this is a woman, like, she's describing a woman who's basically like a small business owner. She's the decision maker. She's the household runner. This woman is pretty great. But as I read it as a modern woman, and with the sort of small voices in the back of my head that used to read feminist magazines and used to think that, we have it so hard that we should be allowed to march and complain, and that somebody should do something to make it easier for us. I was like that. I get it. I heard the voices in my head reading this as like, well, that's just too much to live up to. Well, everyone always thinks that we should be perfect. Well, I thought we broke that mold. But then I stopped, because that is resentment. That resentment will lead you to a nothing life. It really will. So I want to challenge you with this thought. This and a couple others. But here is a challenging thought. You are a descendant of hardworking women. You are a descendant of women who understood that laziness, resentment, and no pride in her work was going to kill her. Okay? So we have it pretty easy these days. We've got medicine, we've got doctors, we've got facilities, and don't get me wrong, everybody has a different sort of life. Doesn't mean that life isn't still hard. There are still really hard choices, and we deal with different things today that they didn't have to back then. But let's face it, most of us don't lose babies in childbirth. Most of us don't die in childbirth. Most of us have enough food. Like in America, we have so much food that we have to purposely exercise to lose weight. That never used to happen. So we have the right to work, we have the right to drive, we have the right to own property, we have all the rights we want, right? Now we have to take responsibility for those rights and make the right decisions. So our ancestors, those who, for the most part, were responsible human beings who understood that taking pride and ownership of their work would help them to live. And if you live, you have descendants. And if you have descendants, your line moves on. We don't really care about these things anymore, but they really did. Because if you're going pretty far back, if your tribe or your country or your territory didn't have enough people, they would eventually be overcome. And people used to actually think about the futures of their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids and how their people, which would be pretty much the extension of their family, right, how they would survive. People actually used to think about this stuff. So they took pride in their work. And so another challenge to you is that this is not saying that you have to sew and knit, right? So it says she shops around for the best yarns and cottons and enjoys knitting and sewing. It doesn't mean that you have to do that, but don't forego your creativity that's inborn in you as a woman, because there's a lot of creative, hands-on stuff that is just innate in women that women are good at. Don't be shamed out of doing that. So people used to shame me because I really like to do little things. I like to make, I went through a scrapbooking phase, I went through a crocheting phase, a sewing phase. I like to make things pretty. I'm not the best at it. You'll never see me pushed and promoted on Instagram, but I liked doing it. It got my mind working. It got me out of laundry for a minute. It got me rested, like physically and emotionally and spiritually, to keep going with my kids. And it's not a big deal. I like cooking. People would shame me for that. Don't be shamed out of doing the things that are just innately feminine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you like knitting and sewing, that's awesome. If you don't and it's something else, that's okay too. Just don't be ashamed of it. Another challenge to you is that she is skilled in the crafts of home and hearth, diligent in homemaking. Our houses do not take care of themselves. Unless you have the money to hire people to take care of your house, it pretty much lands on you and your husband and your kids if you can get them to work. So take pride in your house and the things that you can do. Divide up the work, because I know life is busy. Like, most of us can't just dedicate all of our time to our house, to cleaning it and organizing it and making it beautiful and making it exactly how we want. So I divided up clearly. Like, it also says that she keeps her household busy and productive, right? So she's not doing everything. She's organizing people into jobs to keep the house. But a house will rot if it's not taken care of. So take pride in it. Don't be sucked down this thing where I was sucked down, and where you say with pride, oh, I don't do that. Oh, I don't clean. Dusting? Oh, no. That's archaic. I don't need to do that. Why should I? I'm a modern woman. That was me, okay? That was me. So I'm not saying that you are, but if you are, I assure you that mindset will leave you bitter, resentful, angry, and none of those things lead to happiness. Life is what it is. We've got to take care of our house. We've got to take care of our children. We've got to take care of our spouses. And in turn, they take care of us, right? Clearly, not everything always happens exactly how we want it to, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take on the responsibility of our own work. And so what I really, really like in this is that this woman takes pride in her work. So she's doing the money, she's buying the land, she's organizing a garden, she's organizing her kids, she's organizing her servants, her household, right? To us, the majority of us, that would be like our husbands and our kids will be our household. Get them to do some work. But she takes pride in doing this. She rolls up her sleeves. She gets breakfast out because, let's face it, feeding kids is usually the female's job, which is fine. Whatever. Like, stop complaining about it. I complained about it for years. Sometimes I still catch myself. But roll up your sleeves and take pride in it. Our grandmothers took pride in it. Our great-grandmothers took pride in it. Generation upon generation was like, you know what? This is what's got to be done today. And I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to get to work. I'm going to say with satisfaction at the end of the day that things got done and people were taken care of. And I took on my responsibility and I made the world, therefore, a little bit better. Because if you don't take on your responsibility, if you don't take pride in your work, if you don't roll up your sleeves and get the things done, get your kids fed and bathed, get homework done, get your spouse taken care of so he can go to work, get your own work done if you go off to work, get people organized in your household to get things taken care of in the house, and do it with pride and do it with joy and put on some music and be okay with it. If you don't do that, the world is not a better place. It's actually a little bit worse because your kids could become resentful because they're hungry, because they're lazy and unimaginative now because you haven't shown them how to be productive in the world. Like, just take pride in it and see just how much better life can be if you leave the resentment behind, leave the articles telling us women that we shouldn't have to do this, that we shouldn't have to do that, that life should somehow just magically be easy and cleaning what? Just do it. Let's do it. I dare you, I dare me, I dare us all to just wake up in the morning, roll up our sleeves, be grateful for what we have, be grateful for the day, and march forth. And at the end of the day, be able to say with satisfaction, I did my job well, I went through this day well, and I can say with pride, I got my work done. Because, again, we are descendants of women who got stuff done and who weren't afraid to roll up their sleeves. They knew what their responsibility was. They bore it with dignity and pride. Let's do the same. So that will conclude our study of Proverbs, and that's a little bit longer video than the others, but it's something that was on my heart to share and challenge you with. If you like this video, please hit like, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to be notified of the other videos that I will have coming out soon, please hit the little bell.